All right, folks, there it is. The Oval Office with Bibi Netanyahu, President Trump, Marco Rubio's there, Pete Hegseth, a couple other cabinet secretaries in the room as well. And we had the camera inside that room. You know, they talked about the meeting between the two leaders, and then Trump opened up questions to the media, to the U.S. and the Israeli media, and immediately it was like, jump on with tariffs. And I'm watching the markets trade. While this conversation is going on. And the first question was, would you be open to pausing this push on the tariff, the tariffs that you've announced? And watching the market, it was down about 300 at the time. He said, well, we're not going to do that. It immediately tanked down 800 right away. So my point is, these markets are so jittery. Now woke up this morning, market was down another 1,200 on top of the 2,250 on Friday and the 1,600 on Thursday. We've lost about $10 trillion in market wealth, globally, but certainly the U.S. stock market as well. I want to show you something very, very interesting. During the trading day today, again, everyone's focusing on, will he pause these tariffs? It's clear, there's a clear cause and effect. He instituted the tariff numbers, market tanked. No question about it. He's got a plan. He wants to bring manufacturing here. But I will tell you, everyone's waiting to see if he blinks or if he pauses. Here's what happened. Let's roll a soundbite of CNBC during the day, and Reuters both announced that there was some sort of pause in the tariff. And watch what happened to the market. Watch those charts when we roll this soundbite. Take a listen.
I think we can go with this headline. Apparently, Hassett's been saying that Trump will consider a 90-day pause in tariffs for all countries except for China.
Except for China.
Oh, well, that's huge. I mean, that changes the game.
We'll try and source that exactly in terms of where that's coming from. There, But to your point, longer term, let's say, okay, we get a 90-day pause. I don't know. I'm curious to get your thoughts about credibility.
Yeah, and the reason keep that up there, because just keep that. Because see that chart right there. Watch the S&P. Watch the Dow Jones Industrial Average, NASDAQ as well. Those were all negative. You can see that line. That would be break even. That line straight across. That would be where the market finished on Friday. So they were getting slant. Here, especially Dow Jones Industrial is down 1,800 points at one point today. This rumor comes out, immediately shoots up to plus 500 points. That's 2,000 point move. That's probably a $4 trillion equity move in people's 401ks, people's investments. And it was all just a rumor. When it was within 5 minutes, they discounted it just as a rumor. Market crashed again. We went right back down 1,200 points. So the point I'm trying to make is, yes, these markets are very jittery. They're very nervous about the effect of this global tariff that we're putting on every single country we do business with. It's a very nervous market. I'm out here saying this. I'm a free marketeer. I've said it with Bannon. I've said it with everyone. I hate when government gets involved in monetary policy and certainly involved in our markets, our free markets. We let them fly, and that's what's happening right here. Government's getting involved. I hope I'm wrong. I hope, for the sake of the country, I'm pulling for it to work. I hope Trump's right. I hope Trump sees something that a lot of us are missing here. And I'm hoping like beyond hope, I'm wrong. And again, I would just tell you, this feels like a Howard Lutnick thing. I don't think this is Trump. I could be wrong, but I think it is a Howard Lutnick thing, and I really have never liked nor trusted Mr. Howard Lutnick. Call me crazy. Sorry about that. Okay, Mad Dog, would you say who's ready? I heard you say someone's ready. Who do we have?
Brian Glenn is ready.
Oh, Brian Glenn. Oh, this is great. Let's bring in Rav's chief White House correspondent to give us his take on what's going on. Brian, hey, good to have you. I guess you were inside the Oval just moments ago. Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, that's right, Eric. We just scrambled out of the Oval to come here. We're just outside the West Wing where Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to pull out. He'll probably pull out during our shot. I tell you what, let me just step out of the way real quickly, and I'll show what I'm looking at. Eric, you know this entrance very familiar. This is the West Wing. They wrapped up about a 45-minute press conference, opened up the questions, as you could expect, with tariffs. also, possible engagements with Iran on some of the negotiations there. Just the border, it was kind of all wrapped up.
So can I jump in, Brian? Allow me to jump in. I think it's extremely important. I mean, I was all ears on the tariff questions. Kind of surprised there were only a handful. Thought there'd be a lot more. Glad he answered it, and he was very succinct, saying, no, we're not pausing, we're going to stay with this. But I think that was the other breaking news with the discussion about the sit down with Iran and how he framed it, Brian, right? When he said, Iran better come to the table, they better be okay, because if it's not good, it won't be very good for Iran going forward. Any idea what he may have been alluding to?
Well, a lot of people would love to follow up on that question, and it wasn't an opportunity given on that. But who knows? I mean, look, I know one thing, that Americans do not want to engage in any type of military action with Iran. That's something I don't think we want to. No one wants to get involved with another conflict. But although that answer would lead someone to think that would at least be a possibility of some type of action, but that was definitely a question that stood out from today. And I agree with you. I thought there was tariff questions for the most part, but it wasn't tariff heavy as I thought. Obviously, hostages came up a couple times during that press conference, asking when do you think they could be returned. Obviously, President Trump responded with, well, as soon as we can, possibly. It's one of the things he's committed to, Eric. Yeah,
and famously, Israel was the ones who took out Iranian capability the first time around in the 80s when they were getting close to having a nuclear weapon. And no one wanted to mess with Iran, and Israel came through in the middle of the night one night and just decimated their nuclear program. And I think it's very interesting that this conversation was just had with Bibi Netanyahu sitting next to Trump, and maybe it was a hat tip, like, if we can't get this done, do your thing, so to speak. And again, that's not for speculating, but it was interesting that came up. I was really tuned into that. It was a good one. So we will.
Do you know what's interesting, Eric? If I can say real quickly. Real quickly, I was talking to some Israeli media that was before we went into the Oval Office, and they were telling me they don't often get to ask these types of questions to the Prime Minister that often. So they looked at today's event being a special moment for them to ask those questions in front of President Trump, and also to address President Trump as well. I thought that from a media perspective was very interesting.
Yeah, that was very nice. I thought he was very warm to the Israeli media. That was very nice of Trump to do that. Brian, I got to go. We're up against that break, the hard break. Brian, Glenn, always good having you, brother. Talk to you again soon. And folks, we will be back in 2.5 minutes. That's beautiful. Nassau, Bahamas, very nice. Some say one of the more corrupt places on the planet, but it's a beautiful place to visit once in a while. And you can get there by boat from this place in a couple hours. You've got a boat that'll do 45 knots or so. All right, folks. Tampon Timmy Walz has been more vocal lately, using his very limited knowledge of the world to reestablish his place in Democratic politics. His takes have been horrendous, and he just got reality checked on CNN live by not only the one and only Jake Tapper. Look at the absolute shock and sadness in this pathetic man's voice when he found out that the UAW supports who? Donald Trump's tariffs.
President Trump argues that these tariffs are needed to bring American manufacturing back and to help American workers left behind in places like Minnesota. He has support from the UAW. The UAW called his auto tariffs, quote, a long overdue shift away from a harmful economic framework that has devastated the working class. It signals a return to policies that prioritize the workers who build this country rather than the greed of ruthless corporations, unquote.
I'm so tired of Tim Walz. Here's how tired I am of Tim Walz. The next soundbite was going to be Tim Walz again. I'm going to ask MD to skip that one. Let's move up to the next one, because I can't stand any more Tim Walz on my screen. I don't know about you. As Donald Trump and the Republicans try to save the nation, the Democrats continue to hold weird events that showcase the exact people that helped destroy our country. Look at this freak show where an illegal queer alien took the stage, whatever that is, and bragged about all of their weirdness.
My name is Graisa Martinez Rosas. I am an immigrant. I am undocumented, unafraid, queer, and unashamed.
Well, Gracida Martinez Rosa, I'm going to say adios, because if Tom Homan finds you, you're going to go bye-bye back to wherever you came from. You admitted you're an illegal alien immigrant. Great job. Brilliant. Letitia James, remember her? Only knows one thing: how to hate Donald Trump. That's her entire claim to fame as a corrupt AG from New York, has literally made a name and career for herself by hunting down the president, President Trump. Listen to her latest toxic rant.
That I'm not going to allow my ancestors, all of those who died for me, to be in this position. I am not going to disgrace them and disappoint them. I am going to use the law both as a sword and as a shield and challenge Donald Trump. And each and every time he issues an illegal executive order, I am going to stand up to him, because he represents to me sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. Faith and fear can never share the same space. And so I'm covered by the blood, and I'm not afraid of Donald Trump. You can come after me, but no enemy, nothing formed against me will perish. Nothing formed against me. Nothing formed against me. Nothing formed against me.
Oh my goodness. She was elected Attorney General because she said she was going to go after Donald Trump. So, of course, she went after Donald Trump once she became the Attorney General of New York, and she lost, and she got her butt handed to her several times, and now she's doubling, tripling down. It's the only thing she's got. She sounded like a preacher. By the way, that was at the National Action Network. You know who runs the National Action Network? That little bobblehead freak, Reverend Al. Reverend Al. Yeah, Reverend Al. I air quote Reverend because that guy's another nut job. Democrats, this is what you want? This is how you're going to come back? By just having more Trump derangement syndrome? It killed you in 2024, but by all means, keep digging that hole. I'm not going to take that trouble from you. Before we head to break, I just wanted to remind you all about my podcast and YouTube page. They're both growing great. They're updated daily, including this show, but also things that aren't on the show. So you come out, watch the show, tons of other content, anytime, anywhere. Very important, though. Got to subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on anywhere you get your podcasts. We will be back in 2.5 minutes with Kari Lake, folks. First time on the show. Well, look at that. Fountain Hills, Arizona, and what an apropos, as I say, apropos bump-in shot for my next guest, because welcome back, my next guest, but besides being a good friend of mine for a long time, we've done TV together for a very long time. Well, she's the Trump administration's senior advisor for the U.S. Agency for Global Media, Kari Lake, and I'm thrilled to bring Kari Lake on the Bowling Show since we relaunched the Bowling Show. Kari, really good to speak to you again. Feels like it's been a long time.
Congratulations. I'm so excited to be back on with you. And thanks for starting with the little taste of home. And in Fountain Hills, one of the great communities in the Phoenix metro area, and makes me miss all that sunshine being here in Washington, D.C., helping the president out right now.
Well, I'm glad you're helping him, but I feel for you missing, because I moved down to Boca, Florida, and I never want to go back up north again. Kari, so you oversee the senior advisor, U.S. Agency for Global Media, really important work you guys are doing, and you oversee Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, Middle East, Cuba. Extremely important work you're doing, because you're telling the world why freedom matters, why the Constitution here in America, freedom and liberty, matters so much. Tell us about the mandate.
Well, I mean, that's why many of these outlets started up back in the day. 84 years ago is when Voice of America started to end the scourge of Nazism around the globe, and then helped us end the Cold War. But along the way, I think they've gone off track. Many could argue they've gone off track. Rather than telling the story of America, you could argue that many times they are telling an anti-American story, or they're telling the story of our adversaries and telling the pushing the narrative of our adversaries. And so in many ways, they've gone off the rails, and President Trump recognizes that. These are all taxpayer funded media outlets, all of them. The hardworking men and women in this country are footing the bill for VOA and Radio Free Asia, Radio Free Europe, et cetera, et cetera. And the taxpayers are getting really tired of funding media outlets, whether it be NPR, PBS, VOA, you name it. And where the mission and is the noble mission where they started has long fallen by the wayside, and they're now pushing anti-Americanism. So there's a lot of self-reflecting going on. President Trump has signed an executive order asking me and asking our agency to boil this down to its statutory minimum. That means scaling things back. And of course, we're getting hit with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. I mean, they've even threatened to lock me up if we don't jump when the judge says to jump. And so this is really out of control. The president runs the executive branch of government. And if he says he wants his executive branch, if he wants this agency scaled back to its statutory minimum, that is what we should be doing. And it shouldn't be a district judge telling the president how to run the country. The president gets to decide how to run the executive branch. So we're dealing with that in my agency. But Eric, I think the American people have had it up to here with funding media outlets that are pushing an anti-American narrative across the globe.
I think it's really important that you point that out. NPR, there was a hearing a couple of weeks ago, and I believe it was MTG, if not, whoever it was talking to the senior most person at NPR, and they asked how many people, is it fair and balanced? Are you representing, since the American people, the taxpayers are supplying all the funding for NPR? Is it bad? It was like 87-0. They leaned left on their editorial producers and editorial folks. It was insane, but we fund that. So do you have access to cutting NPR funding as well with this position?
No, this is an agency that oversees all of our global media. Yeah. So all of the media that in many times originates here, but goes out to the globe. Sometimes it originates in Europe or Asia, and it goes out to the globe. And it used to be that it was at least semi in line with our diplomatic policies and our diplomatic mission. And now you could argue that in many cases, they are pushing the narrative of our adversaries. But, speaking of NPR, when you have a liberal, a very far left liberal like Bill Maher calling NPR crazy leftists, you know something's gone wrong. And the American people, we need to cut back on our government. We cannot afford this out of control, bloated government. And we need to find places where we can cut back and give the hardworking taxpayer a break instead of funding things that are not working or have strayed so far away from their mission, their noble mission, that they're no longer effective.
Carrie, I'm so fascinated by the Voice of America specifically. You're literally putting out the current president, whoever it is, whether it was Obama when he was running things, or who the hell knows what Biden was doing. He was probably half asleep, didn't even know what Voice of America was. But for Trump, it's talking to the rest of the world about how important America first and MAGA is. So Voice of America, how many people are actually listening? What's your audience? Let's put it that way. And I guess you can incorporate all the rest of them too, Radio Free Europe, Asia, et cetera.
Well, I will tell you, the government oftentimes inflates numbers that they want inflated, deflates numbers. You can't always trust the government's numbers. And I don't believe a lot of the numbers that we've seen when it comes to viewership. I don't think the viewership is as great as has been claimed by the government. I just recently saw a video was sent to me. I looked at some of the videos from a Middle East Broadcasting Network, which is another grantee that the American taxpayers are paying for to the tune of millions upon millions of dollars. And they were putting out feeds, and I saw 37 viewers on some of these feeds, 35 viewers. This is not maybe worthwhile for the taxpayer to be paying for. But regardless of what I think about it, the president has asked us through an executive order on March 14th to scale this back to its statutory minimum. So that is what I'm doing. I'm working here to scale this outlet back. Almost all of the staff are on administrative leave right now, and we are scaling this back. Of course, now we've been dragged into court, and they're trying to prevent us from listening to the president. And so we're in a court battle right now, and they're trying to push contempt charges at me. because we're working through the court system. But, this is what we're seeing in all aspects of the government right now. Watch what Linda McMahon is trying to do. Is she's trying to scale back the Department of Education as well, as we're trying to scale back agencies that have gotten out of control because the president has asked us to, for the survival of our republic, because we can't afford to be spending money the way we've been spending it. And judges are trying to stop him. And so it's really interesting. I'm kind of dealing with the same thing that a lot of these other agencies are dealing with. And we're just going to keep moving forward and going through these court cases because we have to. But in the end, I do think we will prevail. And I think the Supreme Court will come in and remind these judges that the president is the one in charge of the executive branch of government.
Yeah, I hope so. And I know this is job one across all aspects of government. Trump said we're going to come in and clean house, Doge, et cetera. Great. Love that. And then, Carrie, I'm hoping that you're really aggressive with the editorial, the message that we're putting out, that the American people are in favor of Trump, are in favor of MAGA, are in favor of the anti-globalist and more populist movement that's sweeping this country and so many other countries. I think that's so important to get that editorial straight. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to tell you, though, I haven't even started to touch on the editorial part. My job is really to oversee the agency that oversees all of that. And I'm starting to dig in and look at where all of the waste, fraud, and abuse. And when I say abuse, the American taxpayer has been abused by the federal government and many agencies, including the U.S. Agency of Global Media. It is rotten to the core. I just canceled a couple of weeks ago a $250 million 15-year lease that the previous leadership under Biden signed and burdened the American taxpayer with, getting a fancy building that isn't even equipped to cover media with media broadcasting capabilities. It's ridiculous. I canceled that. I've canceled many contracts. We were paying a fortune to Reuters and AP and the agency French Press to tell us what the news is. If you're a billion-dollar news agency, you shouldn't have to rely on the AP and Reuters to tell you what the news is. So we are being very aggressive in pushing the president's executive order. And, some of these outlets will survive and others may not. But at the end of the day, it has to make sense. It has to be effective. And if it's not, we need to analyze it. And if there's any abuse, waste, and fraud, it needs to be rooted out. We got one chance to do that, and we're doing it right now.
Great. And before we let you go, I know you want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the story of the last 4 or 5 days, the tariffs and their effect. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's going to completely change the way that business is done around the globe. And finally, we're going to have trade deals that are not giving us a stick in the eye. I mean, this has been outrageous over the many past decades. And President Trump said it. The leadership in the White House over the many past decades have not been making good deals. And maybe it was because they weren't skilled deal makers like President Trump. But if you'll notice, last week, on Liberation Day, as he called it, he announced tariffs to all of these countries. And guess what? They're all coming to the bargaining table saying, how can we make this more fair? How can we make this more equitable for the United States of America? They've been getting away with murder when it comes to the trade deals that have been written and pushed on us. And we were told they were good trade deals when in fact they were not. We've watched as manufacturing in this country has been decimated, almost doesn't exist in many cases. And we're going to bring all that back under President Trump's leadership. We're going to be a nation that makes things once again. We're not going to be relying on the teat of all of these other countries. Can you imagine if China and all these other countries where everything is made just overnight turned everything off? We would be in a terrible situation, and it's bad for our national security. President Trump recognizes that, and he's making sure that he makes good on a promise to the American people, which is bringing back the middle class. I'm thrilled he's doing it. I can't wait to see the progress that will be made. I know this will be successful. There'll be a few bumps and bruises along the way, but that short-term pain will be long-term gain for generations to come, including my kids, my grandkids, and yours.
We'll leave it right there, Carrie. Really good having you back on the Bolling Show, and looking forward to talking to you again as you progress down that road of, again, scaling back the finances, the spending, and then that editorial. Yep. Really good to have you out, Carrie. Carrie Lake, everybody.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, folks, we'll be back in 2.5 minutes. All right, folks, sometimes I wonder what the late, great Rush Limbaugh, would say if he saw the state of America, what we're like these days. He passed away in February of 2021, just a few weeks after Joe Biden was sworn in as president, leading to the most pitiful, horrible 4 years of presidency this country has ever lived through, as well as the pinnacle of leftist insanity. Rush Limbaugh was great at highlighting the left's growing madness unlike anyone else could.
Put the camera back on me. Do this. When you look down, what do you see? You don't see anything because you're not wearing any ribbons. It means you're a bigot. It means you're a racist. It means you're a sexist. It means you're a homophobe. It probably means you're a white guy. It probably means you're a European, and you alone are responsible for all the ills
Rush
of America.
Limbaugh knew how to mock the woke mind virus before it was even invented, but I don't think he could ever imagine how far it would get.
What are we protesting today?
Donald Trump.
Well, what's Donald Trump doing that we're protesting?
Well, he is up the American democracy right now and trying to kind of repeal a bunch of Constitution, like, rights and liberties. So,
is there anything in specific that he's...
I don't have all the information, but I do know.
What are you against?
Personally, I'm against tyrants. I'm against tyranny. That's what I'm against.
What is that?
Somebody who's coming in and trying to...
This guy had no idea. When you go out to protest, but you have no idea what you're actually protesting, that's one of the many talented idiots. Let's call him a useful idiot at one of the hands-off protests that took place over the weekend across the country to protest President Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Protest what exactly? Well, they don't even freaking know. They're taking away rights, they say. What rights are they taking away, protesters? The rights of the corrupt deep state to keep lining their own pockets with your and my taxpayer money to fund sex change operations for hyenas in Peru? Tyrants and kings. Oh, you mean the ones who censor free speech online? Those tyrants? The ones who hid stories that hurt their preferred rulers, Hunter Biden laptop, who forced lockdowns and masks on and vaccines on Americans or else? Those kind of tyrants and kings? These people once rallied against the system. They wanted to burn it all down. They didn't quite know what it meant back then either, but they knew they were against it. Now, they're all about keeping that same system in place, all because it's President Trump who's trying to dismantle it. But the level of leftist insanity we're seeing now, like I said, even the late, great Rush Limbaugh wouldn't believe it. And by the look of it, folks, it's going to be a long 4 years. I imagine a liberal's daily to do this looks something like this. Wake up 9 in the morning, cry some snowflake tears into my mocha chocolate with soy milk and almond milk too. Swastika drawing class at 10 a.m. Memorize Soros-distributed socialist protest propaganda chats for the day at 11 a.m. Around noon, prepare meaningless posters for worthless protests. Protest and burn some stuff down for no reason. Wish for President Trump and Elon Musk to disappear from the face of the earth. Rinse and repeat tomorrow. The communists let their displeasure be known this weekend.
This is what kicking the out of fascism looks like.
Okay, Swalwell, and this is what sleeping with a Chinese spy looks like, Eric. Well, but you already knew that, didn't you? Right, Swalwell? Under the slogan, communism beats fascism, thousands and thousands of Soros-paid protesters took to our streets, our cities, with signs paid for by none other than the Democrat Socialist Party of America. Of course they did. And of course they are. They're paid for and brought to you by Marxists. You see, they don't like it when the government tries to create less government and more money for all of us to keep of our own. So what they're going to do is this. They're going to create their own little government to try and cancel out the real existing Donald Trump government, you know, the one Americans overwhelmingly voted for. Listen.
Americans want us to fight back against Trump's lies and offer a better alternative. Trump has stacked his cabinet with out-of-touch billionaires who are causing chaos and hurting working people. That's why we are launching the People's Cabinet. It will be made up of experts, leaders, and everyday Americans who will share reliable and accurate information that you can use to
Did I hear that right? Did I hear that right? The People's Cabinet? Well, it's kind of like the People's Republic of China ring to it, or the People's Republic of Korea. ring to it, doesn't it? Well, yeah, except that what the DNC chair right there, that was the DNC chair, what he's suggesting is illegal and unconstitutional, actually constitutes insurrection. Hey, lefties, in case you didn't know what an insurrection actually is, it's a mutiny, a revolution, insurgents, uprising. You know what that is, right, Ilhan Omar?
We are currently living through a president who wants to be a dictator. In America, we do not accept dictators and we do not accept kings. We have a billionaire who has bought a seat next to the president, using him as a puppet.
Well, that's the congresswoman who represents an entire district in Minnesota that, I don't know, maybe like terrorists, I guess, or terrorist grooming capital of America, we could call it that. She wants Sharia law, by the way, and doesn't want to abide by constitutional law, those folks in her district who married her brother, she did, for immigration reasons, absolutely adores those types of folks. But go on, Ilhan Omar, tell us about your version of democracy, because we already know what your constituents prefer.
Do you feel more comfortable living under American law, or do you feel more comfortable living under Sharia law?
Sharia law. I'm a Muslim. I prefer Sharia law. Right. Sharia law, yes.
You prefer Sharia law over American law?
Of course, yeah. Of course, yeah.
But the overwhelming theme at these protests is not just the fact that they're all paid for by the likes of George Soros and others, or that they all support terrorists because they tend to, or they hate the Constitution. We know they do. It's that they're all being delivered the same propaganda lines that they're more than happy to regurgitate.
We're all closer to being on the streets than having a bank account that looks like his. How do you think he got to where he's at? I have people who come up to me and say, Maxwell, why would they be stealing? Elon Musk is already the richest person in the world. He has enough money. The question is, how do you think he became the richest person in the world?
Or moments like this, because Congressman Jamie Raskin just can't help himself and could never, ever miss an opportunity to beg and plead for illegal gang members to be returned to America, come hell or high water.
But Judge Boasberg told him that if you've got the means to unlawfully deport someone, you find the means to bring them back.
So a U.S. congressman says, bring him back. Bring back the thug illegal that came here, gang member, MS-13 gang. Bring him back to the United States. Useful idiots, folks, all of them. Useful freaking idiots. Lenin was right. You need those idiots to divide and conquer any society. Democrats, useful idiots. We'll be back in 2.5. Wow, St. Martin. Never been there. Oh, maybe I have been there. I'm not sure. I don't know. Pretty beach. Of course, the most beautiful beaches are right here in South Florida. I'm a big advocate for Florida and South Florida. All right, let's bring in our good friend Steve Bannon, who's having a very good hair day today, I've noticed, and he says it's because he's out west. I asked him if he had a blowout at the dry bar or something. He said, no, I'm out west. But I did tell him the story that a young lady came up to me over the weekend. I'm in Universal with my wife and my family, my nieces from Chicago. She comes up, she watches the show, and she said, I love those things you do with Bannon at the end. By the way, is he single? Because I'd like to maybe meet him. So I said, I'll ask him on Monday. So I just thought I'd pass that along to you, Mr. Bannon.
Thank you. I live a monkish, as people know, I live a monkish existence in Washington, D.C. So, yeah, but I appreciate the introduction.
Yeah, you're very, very busy.
Appreciate the fan.
Very busy man. Can we do this very quickly? So this market is so jittery about these tariffs. We had the big downdraft Thursday and Friday last week. This week we opened up Monday 1,500 points lower again, massive melting down, and then there was a rumor. Mad Dog, just roll this. Don't play the soundbite. Just roll it as VO, as we call it. Let Steve take a look at this. And Steve, if you see that chart, these charts that keep rolling, this is around, I'm going to say around late morning, near midday. Market was down 900, 1,200 points, bouncing around. A rumor came out that Trump was going to pause for 60 days, possibly. CNBC reported it, Reuters reported it. The market turned around 2,000 points from the low, back up within a minute or two. It was confirmed it was just a rumor. 2,000 point drop again. I mean, what a jittery market, Steve.
Well, I think they're looking for a process. If the tweet you're talking about is Kevin Hassett, the head of the National Economic Council, a very powerful position, said there's going to be a 90-day pause. Obviously not a 90-day pause, but what we saw throughout the day is the beginning of a process. I think Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, put out a couple of tweets later, Eric, about the Japanese coming in for a systematic and really work through with I think probably our most significant trading partner, ex-China. And then the president tripled down on China. I think their tariffs now are over 100% because of what they try to do as retaliation. This is quite obvious, a trade war, I think, very much focused of the Chinese Communist Party. And the rest of the world, I think, is going to work to come through and make deals with the president. And I think this is one of the reasons Black Monday was canceled. At the end of the day, it's pretty normal day on Wall Street.
Well, I'll beg to differ with normal because, 1,500 lower, a couple of hundred high. I think it was canceled because Jim Cramer called for a Black Monday sell-off that, again, like I told you, there's an index that takes whatever Cramer says and it does the opposite, and it's actually beating the S&P, which is incredible. I'm not
inverse Cramer.
Inverse Cramer. Yeah, it's a well-known index, and I'm a big fan of that. He was asked about the first question with Netanyahu in the Oval today was, "Are you thinking about pausing?" He said, "No, we're not talking about that." And I will give you credit, Steve, that I want this to work. I want this. I don't know how in God's name it's going to, but I want it to because I've been doing this a long time. And the market, I watched while he said we're not going to pause, and I'm watching it trading because it was still open at the time. And it really, it dipped a little bit, but it didn't take a beating that I thought it would have had he said that.
Yeah.
So maybe we are running out of steam to the downside, so to speak.
Well, I think people are seeing a process. Japan's going to come in. We know there's 50 major countries that are stacked up like flights at LaGuardia on a Friday night. People want to come in. President Trump's restructuring the geoeconomic order. Geoeconomic and geostrategic order. Pete Hegseth down in Panama today. So a lot of stuff going on. Big ruling out of the Supreme Court this afternoon. So I think a lot of things are positive for President Trump. He's shown a process on this trade restructuring, and I think the focus is on the Chinese Communist Party that he's going to hammer. So this is why I think it's people see a process, and I think the panic's gone. Black Monday was canceled as much as Jim Cramer wanted it, and Katie Tur wanted it. I think it was canceled, and it's now time, I think, to get back to work.
Let's do it. See, we hand it off to you, and we will see you again tomorrow, my friend. Have a great show.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate you. Love the handover.